All right, today we're going to be talking about angle relationships. And we think of two angles right off the bat. They're called complementary angles and supplementary angles. Let's take a look at some complementary angles here. I have angle 1 and angle 2 listed right here. If I'm told that the measure of angle 1 is 42 degrees right here, and the measure of angle 2 is 48 degrees, that would be right here, then I'm looking at the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2. I'm looking at their sum, and their sum here is 90 degrees. So we can look at the definition for complementary angles here. Two angles are complementary angles if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. Let's look at supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are these two angles listed right here. We have angle 3 and we have angle 4. We're given that the measure of angle 3 right here is 125 degrees, and the measure of angle 4 is given here as 55 degrees. If we now look at the sum of the measures of those two angles, we'll see the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4, that equals 180 degrees. If we now look at the definition for supplementary angles, we see that two angles are supplementary angles if the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. Let's look at a theorem. Let's look at the triangle sum theorem. It states that the sum of the measures of the three angles in any triangle is 180 degrees. Let's look at this example. I have a triangle listed right here. And I have, find the measure of that missing angle. It actually has a question mark. So I'm looking at the two angles listed. One says 28 degrees, the other says 17 degrees. So to find the measure of the missing angle, I add the two angles that I do know and get 45 degrees plus that third angle, what I don't know yet, and their sum equals 180 degrees. So I subtract 45 from both sides of the equation to get that question mark by itself, and we find that that unknown angle measure is 135 degrees. Let's write that in. 135 degrees. So you can find the missing angle of any triangle if you're given two angle measures. And lastly, we're looking at congruent angles when we have parallel lines. And we're told that if a pair of parallel lines is intersected by a transversal, these pairs of angles are congruent. And we have three different kinds of pairs of angles. One are alternate interior angles, another is alternate exterior angles, and the third, corresponding angles. Let's talk about each one individually. First, we'll talk about the alternate interior angles. And those angles are the angles that are inside the parallel lines, but on opposite sides of the transversal right here. That would be angle 4 is congruent to angle 6. Likewise, angles 3 and angle 5 are alternate interior angles because they are inside the interior of the parallel lines on opposite sides of that transversal. Let's look at alternate exterior angles now. Angle 1 and angle 7, those are both alternate exterior angles. Let's see where they're located. 1 and 7, right here. So they're on the outside of these parallel lines on opposite sides of that transversal. Same thing if I look at angle 2 and angle 8. Angle 2 right here and angle 8 right here. Again, they're outside the parallel lines on opposite sides of the transversal. The last kind of congruent angles that are formed between the intersection of a transversal and two parallel lines are called corresponding angles. I like to think of corresponding angles as having the same relative location. Let's see what that means. If I look at angles 1 and angle 5, those are listed as corresponding angles that are congruent. So angles 1 and angle 5, they're right here. So if I look at their location, it seems that they're both above, right? They both are above the parallel line and to the left of the transversal. Angles 2 and 6 are also corresponding, and those are also above the parallel lines and both on the right-hand side of that transversal. Let's look at the two other pairs of corresponding angles. Angle 4 and angle 8. Angle 4 and 8, they're both below their parallel line and to the left of the transversal. Below the parallel lines and of the transversal. Let's make sure we label the transversal. It's this line right here. I'm going to write it right here. Transversal. And they look like triangles or sides. Like this. And you fill it in. Do the same thing here. And fill it in. And now we can see that these two lines are indeed parallel with that notation. One other thing to mention is sign basically on top of it. That symbol means is congruent to. And it's worth noting that is congruent to also means has the same measure. So it's angles that are congruent.